Hello everybody, it's Silly Pilly here, and today I'm going to be reading every terminal log in ULTRAKILL so that you don't have to, because I know that half the fan base can't read anyway. So I'm just going to start with enemies, and then I'll also do the info logs of the weapons if you didn't know those have that. So here we go. Enemy Filth. Type Lesser Husk. Data. Husks are physical manifestations of the souls of the damned. Their physical form is based on the value of the original soul, which is determined by the strength of its will and its prevalence in public consciousness, the living souls that remember it. Filth are the lowest form of husk, whose souls were too weak and unimportant to even form a complete body, physical body. Even among husks, they have the lowest intelligence, driven purely by hunger. Strategy. Most weapons are easily capable of taking down filth, but their powerful jaws and sheer numbers can quickly overwhelm a target if underestimated. Explosives are the most effective way to take down swarms, but any weapon that can hit more than one target will be efficient. Next enemy, Stray. Type, Lesser Husk. Data. While their tall stature may seem intimidating, strays are often afraid of most danger and will try to stay at a safe distance, only attacking via projectiles formed with hell energy. Although controlling and manifesting this energy is a complicated task, strays have very low intelligence and are only able to do so via pure instinct. Nevertheless, humans were unable to replicate this level of accuracy and control, particularly the stray's ability to cause the energy orbs to selectively ignore other husks. Strategy. Most weapons will be effective against them, but a revolver headshot is the quickest and surest way to eliminate a stray. Due to their static nature and slow rate of attacking, they are an excellent target for projectile parrying. Next enemy, Schism. Type, Greater Husk. Data. The result of two souls attempting to manifest in the same space, causing an amalgamation of two physical bodies. Due to the double body mass, they're quite resilient to damage, but have very poor motor control and thus cannot aim with any degree of accuracy, resorting to barrages of energy orbs in the general direction of their opponent. Strategy. Piercer revolvers' charged headshots are an efficient tool for a quick kill against schisms, though their displaced head can make aiming difficult for the inexperienced. A point-blank pump charge shotgun blast with 2 pumps will be able to take them down in a single shot. Due to their poor aim, they aren't a priority target, but the sheer amount of projectiles can sometimes make avoiding them tricky in busy encounters. Soldier. Type, Greater Husk. Data. Soldiers are an augmented version of strays whose technological implants have been scavenged from broken machines to channel hell energy with greater efficiency. This increase in power gives soldiers more self-confidence, causing them to act more aggressively than normal strays. Despite the enhancements, their intelligence remains low and it has yet to be determined who or what actually augmented them. Strategy. The shotgun is an excellent weapon against soldiers, as long as its use is swift so as to not allow them to protect themselves with melee attacks. Since soldiers charge their shots in front of them rather than above them, the charge is also easier to interrupt via a precise revolver shot for an explosive kill. Thanks to their augmentations, soldiers are able to withstand normal explosions with little to no damage. The more powerful red explosions will go through their guard, however, and they are unable to block if not on the ground. The Corpse of King Minos. Type, Supreme Husk. Data. Once the great and beloved king of the Lust Layer, Minos has now been reduced to a shambling corpse. Due to his incredible power of will and status as a just ruler in life, remembered even millennia after his death, the manifestation of his soul is the largest husk ever to have been recorded. Small traces of the original soul can still be detected in the body, but the corpse itself is animated and controlled entirely by the snake-like parasites that he once commanded. Despite once bringing upon the renaissance of the Lust Layer, his corpse now only seeks sinners to punish. Strategy. Due to his large stature, it can be quite difficult to recover blood from him, but his hands are usually holding on to the walls of the arena, which can be used for refueling. Any weapon will work against an enemy this large, but melee and projectile parries make for a quick way to inflict grave damage. Although it moves slowly, the black hole he summons is extremely dangerous and cannot be destroyed. Stalker. Type: Lesser Husk. Data: as the Greed Layer's punishment, stalkers have been forced to carry heavy boulders up the monuments of mankind's greed for all eternity. They have carried out their punishment for so long that their bodies have evolved, warped, and grown to better suit it. Their limbs have twisted to give them better balance while carrying boulders on their backs, and their skin and muscles have completely dried up, allowing them to survive direct contact with the dunes of gold dust that Greed's sun has raised to unfathomably high temperatures. However, an unidentified sentient force has replaced the boulders they would normally carry with high-tech bombs that, upon detonation, will transform any nearby blood into the gold dust sand that covers the layer's surface. Research has shown the technology to be very similar to the augmentations of the modified strays known as soldiers, so it is likely both modifications come from the same source. Strategy. The lights on the canister give information on a stalker's state. The color shows the state of their explosive, and the brightness of the color shows how much health the stalker has left. It's advisable to forcibly detonate a stalker rather than allowing one to detonate itself, as the latter explosion will have a larger area of effect. If a stalker gets close to its target and can no longer be pushed away, a ground slam wave can launch them out of range so they can be detonated safely in mid-air, since the explosion is mostly horizontal. Attaching magnets to a stalker will reduce the radius of its detonation. Insurrectionist. Type: Supreme Husk. Data: the Sisyphean insurrectionists were an army of husks gathered and trained by King Sisyphus for overthrowing heaven's control of hell, freeing the sinners from their eternal torment. During an era of chaos in heaven, as the angelic watch was absent, Sisyphus began setting his plan in motion as his forces recruited all husks that were intelligent enough to be useful to their cause, and began attacking the demons that wandered the dunes of greed. Upon the establishment of the council and subsequent return of peace to heaven, Gabriel and an army of angels were sent down to crush the insurrection and subjugate Sisyphus's army. Although their battle was well fought, the inexperienced insurrectionists could not match the educated strategy of the angels, who quickly descended upon King Sisyphus with great force, eventually overpowering and killing him, leaving the insurrectionists without a chain of command. Left scattered and disoriented, the warriors were easily picked off one by one, their bodies cut apart, leaving behind only the bare essentials required to carry on their eternal punishment of hauling heavy boulders up the mountains. Left scattered and disoriented, the warriors were easily picked off one by one, their bodies cut apart, leaving behind only the bare essentials required to carry on their eternal punishment of hauling heavy boulders up the monuments of mankind's arrogance and greed. Although the blood of their enemies still stains their bodies, and their grasp clutches their fallen foes, their will and fierce fury only serve as mental torment in knowing how close they were to freedom. Strategy. The Sisyphean insurrectionists soak their feet in the blood of their enemies to protect them from the heat of the Greed's dunes. But the rest of their body is still skin and flesh, which can be set aflame to greatly weaken their defenses, increasing the damage of any attack dealt to them. Though they have practically unlimited range, each of the insurrectionist swings has strengths and weaknesses. Learning which way to dodge to avoid each attack is vital. The insurrectionist's stomp is fast and destructive, so it's inadvisable to stay close for long. The malicious face they wield as a weapon is not a part of their body, so hitting it will not deal damage to an insurrectionist, but this also means that it can still be used to heal even if its wielder blood has been turned into sand. Ferrymen. Type: Supreme Husk. Data: Ferrymen are rare husks whose powerful bodies, trained skills, and blind faith have granted them the chance of becoming the transporters of souls between the layers of hell. They have each been given a holy cloth by heaven as a symbol of their devotion to God's order, which they wear over their bodies to hide the human form that they've grown to despise as a reminder of their sins in life, stopping them from becoming angels, to the extent that they have torn off their own skin and flesh, leaving behind only bones. Due to the holy power emanating from the cloth, ferrymen's skeletal bodies have slowly been colored bright and radiant, and their skulls have enough latent energy to open gates that otherwise stop husks from exiting their places of torment. Each ferry can only have one ferryman at a time, so when a new ferryman is formed, it will fight another to the death in order to take their place and inherit their cloth. The loser's skull is taken as a trophy and used to grant the winner passage across the layers in order to transport the souls of the damned to their destinations. Ferrymen will often use the knowledge from their past life to improve their ferries, growing past the need for oars, which are now used by ferrymen only as weapons. As the influx of souls has ended with the death of mankind, the ferrymen have lost their purpose and now wander around aimlessly, hoping that the angels would grant them passage into heaven, despite Gabriel being the only one who cares about their efforts. Strategy. Ferrymen choose their attacks based on their opponent's actions. When approached, they move to safety, and when retreated from, they'll apply pressure via attacks with greater reach. Despite its looks, their uppercut is quite dangerous and can be difficult to dodge. It's best not to stay in the air for too long. Some of their attacks are parryable and some are not. Pay attention to the color of their warning flash to learn which are which. Ferrymen may attempt to cross a retreating opponent, up by rolling behind them before attacking. Keep track of their position, and if they roll too often, try being more aggressive. Moving into the machines. Swords machine. Type: Greater Machine. Data: its original form is unrecognizable after years of scavenging scrap and rebuilding itself. But among scrapheads, the swords machine is quite famous due to its combat prowess and self-made form. Ugly to most, but beautiful to enthusiasts, spawning many copycats. It wields a self-made sword with a motor on it that, When revved, will heat the blade, cutting through most organic matter with ease. Due to its possessive hoarding behavior, it's one of the few machines still capable of vocalization, an ability most have discarded for more efficient resource management. Strategy. Despite its excellent performance against Hell's denizens, its design does not take into account extremely mobile opponents, so the best way to avoid its blade is to jump out of its vertical range. Its motorized sword makes for predictable attacks, making the sword machine an excellent target for parrying. Although its use of ranged weapons is primitive at best, its sword throws can be unexpectedly accurate thanks to its mastery of the weapon. Drone. Type, lesser machine. Data. A mass-produced security device built as both a surveillance camera and a security guard. Though originally built to only use non-lethal ammunition, they have scavenged parts from the defunct machines on the surface for greater efficiency at collecting blood. Curious by nature, but to keep production costs low, their intelligence is very limited. Strategy. Due to their lightweight, physical projectiles such as nails will push them around, making them harder to deal consistent damage to. On death, they will make a last-ditch effort to harm their opponent with a self-destruct, but powerful single attacks and explosives will make them explode instantly. Punching a drone will redirect their suicide dive, making them a high-risk offensive opportunity. Their scanning mechanism makes a chirping sound, which can be listened to. Their scanning mechanism makes a chirping sound, which can be listened for to make them easier to track down, as their flight and small size can lead them to hard-to-reach places. Street cleaner. Type, lesser machine. Data. Originally built as a way to purify the tainted air of cities after the climate catastrophe, street cleaners were made obsolete during the New Peace and were repurposed as scouts for Hell expeditions. However, their urge to clean remained, and after the fall of mankind, they began burning any organic matter they came across in an effort to purify the world. Strategy. Due to their combat experience, they can be tricky to take down with projectiles or explosives. The canister on their back is a major weak point that can be shattered with a precision shot, such as a marksman coin ricochet from behind. Point-blank attacks can also be very efficient, but must be performed quickly to avoid the fire of their flamethrowers. V2. Type, Supreme Machine. Data. The V model was built for war, with V1 boasting a new kind of exterior plating that allowed refueling through contact with blood rather than through a separate blood refueling process. Due to its necessary thinness, it is far less durable, but the ability to fix itself and rebuild broken parts on the fly would outweigh the negatives on an active battlefield. However, during the prototyping phase, the new peace was established and war became irrelevant. V1's planned production was cancelled and an updated model V2 was developed instead, using the standardized plating, since durability was far more important during times of peace when no bloodshed was necessary. Neither model ever reached mass production due to the end of wars completely draining any demand, so it's likely only a single prototype build of each model remains in existence. Strategy. V2 is adept at controlling space and will take advantage of this to change the flow of battle to throw off its opponent. Stay too close and it will run away. Stay too far and it will come close. V2's high mobility makes it a tricky target to hit, and especially difficult to heal off of. When in need of blood and unable to catch up, it's instead recommended to stay away from it and let it come to you instead. V2 will switch weapons depending on the distance from its target, If one of its weapons is difficult to avoid, a change in proximity will close it off. Knowledge of the synergies of one's own arsenal can allow one to turn V2's weapons against it. Mind Flayer. Type, Greater Machine. Data. Rare but extremely dangerous, the Mind Flayer is a machine that has adapted and mastered the use of hell energy alongside its own technological prowess. The machine itself is only the top part of its apparent body, the rest of which is a plastic shell in the form of a human, which they seem to have built themselves. The plastic body serves no function and is only for aesthetic purposes. Despite it being a waste of resources, Mind Flayers will use everything in its power to protect the plastic body from harm, even if that means destroying itself in the process. Mind Flayers seem to prefer a female form, though very rare occasions of male forms have also been recorded. Strategy. When encountering a Mind Flayer, it's imperative to keep track of their actions, either through visuals or audio. Due to their homing projectiles being fired in a burst, a safe explosive such as a knuckle blaster, blast wave is the most efficient in deflecting them. Their instant teleportation can make consistent positional advantage quite difficult, but a screwdriver drill will temporarily stop them from teleporting. V2 Second. Type, Supreme Machine. Data. After its defeat and escape, V2 dove deeper into hell, killing other machines for their blood to help its recovery with the intent of taking revenge on V1 and recovering its original arm. After finding a temporary replacement from one of its victims, V2 used parts from other machines to transform the new placeholder arm into a mobility tool that would allow it to catch up to V1's fast descent into the deeper layers. In order to prepare for their second and final encounter, it researched the combat data from their previous battle to copy strategies and techniques from the older and more experienced V1 to give itself an upper hand. However, despite all its preparation, V2 lost again, and unable to escape this time, was brought to a swift and decisive end by its predecessor. Strategy. Although V2's coins may seem extremely dangerous at first, they are also an excellent opportunity for high damage if shot before V2 can. V2's nail gun can be circumvented or turned against itself via magnets. Hitting V2 with its own arm will cause it to enrage instantly. Sentry. Type, Greater Machine. Data. One of the many war machines created during the final war. Although there were attempts to find new purpose for them during the new peace, their streamlined design made them unable to be repurposed until the start of Hell expeditions. Their extremely powerful legs and feet allow them to dig into the ground, making them immovable by most forces and allowing them to easily line up any shot without interruption. Despite their size, they were built to be extremely light, which, when combined with the power of their legs, allow them to move at extremely fast speed. Such power and lightness have made their legs one of the most sought-after parts by scrapheads. Most machines will only render a simplified approximation. Most machines will only render a simplified approximation of their visual surroundings for faster processing speed. But sentries use full renders instead, giving them perfect accuracy even over extremely long distances. Strategy. Due to their powerful legs, once they've dug into the ground to aim, they can no longer move. Once dug in, the only ways to interrupt their attacks are shooting them with the electric rail cannon, hitting their antenna with the revolver, launching them with the ground slam, wave, or punching them with the knuckle blaster. As long as they haven't dug in, their light weight makes them easy to launch and keep in the air where they are harmless. A good way to disable a sentry for a longer period of time is to shoot nails into them with the nail gun, and then placing a magnet in a nearby wall or ceiling, which will pull them once they've been knocked off balance. Gutterman. Type, Greater Machine. Built in the early days of the Final War, the Guttermen were one of the first successful experiments in using blood as a fuel source, as well as the first automatons to be deployed in wide-scale conflict. During the war's first phase, an era of trench warfare, these seemingly unstoppable walls were airdropped into enemy trenches, which they would then slowly and systematically clear out, as all opposing soldiers would have to choose between being minced by the Guttermen or running out of the trench and getting mowed down by machine gun fire. Researchers had not yet found a way to keep the blood inside the machine fresh, so a live fuel source was strapped inside, kept alive by minimal life support before the Guttermen were welded shut. Although publicly these fuel sources were claimed to be volunteer patriots, most were deserters, battle-fatigued returnees, or prisoners of war. Forces from far beyond took notice of the cruelty of man was capable of, and the suffering of these human blood supplies served as an inspiration for the creation of the mannequins. Strategy. The shield is a Gutterman's main defense. Destroying it with a knuckle blaster will cause them to take increased damage. Although slow at first, their tracking will improve the longer they maintain line of sight. It's best not to stay out in the open for too long. Once the shield has been broken, the Gutterman's punches can be parried, which resets their tracking. A Gutterman's corpse can be ground slammed to cause a large explosion that damages surrounding enemies and launches the attacker high in the air. Gutter Tank. Type, Greater Machine. Data. As Guttermen single-handedly ended the trench warfare era of the Final War, armies scrambled to create countermeasures, leading to the creation of more machines of war. Built from the foundations of Guttermen to save time, the gutter tanks were equipped with highly efficient explosives and arms capable of damaging and destroying thick armor. The slow lumbering walls that once dominated the field had now become obsolete. As human soldiers had quickly become useless in war, utterly outclassed by machines, they were almost entirely phased out. This led to the second era of the Final War, where machines fought machines in a back-and-forth tide, as new designs were phased in and out at a feverish pace, each designed specifically to counter the last. Although at first the soldiers celebrated returning home, they found soon that the pointless, endless arms race left little in its wake. All resources were used on machines of war, and impoverished civilians had to struggle to survive. Home was just another battlefield, a war of all against all. Conquest leads to war, war leads to famine, famine leads to strategy. The gutter tank's punch is deceptively fast and powerful. The best way to get close safely is to bait a punch before closing the gap. Due to reused technology, the freeze-frame rocket launcher is capable of freezing gutter tank rockets too, making them temporarily incapable of long-range combat. Earth Mover. Type, Supreme Machine. Data, Earth Movers were the pinnacle of the arms race, often called the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. It took only one to level an entire city and leave nothing but fire in its wake. The last era of the Final War had begun. The first machines large enough to house a shield generator, these walking fortresses could only be made vulnerable from within, making them the new front lines for smaller, more mobile machines. Due to their colossal size, they required both blood and solar power to function. When the final era escalated, cleansing the world with fire, the surviving civilians were forced to evacuate and build new homes on the back of these machines, as the surface became an inhospitable wasteland where no flora or fauna could flourish. Eventually, the soot, smoke, and decay from unending global war would blot out the sun, casting the world into the long night, and Earth movers, unable to feed on sunlight, shut down and died out one by one. War had become entirely dependent on them. Large-scale conflict was no longer feasible. Finally, mankind started to work together to reverse the effects of the long night climate catastrophe, and so began the new peace. 200 years of war for its own sake ended not with a bang, but utter silence. At the brink of despair, the planet would slowly learn to breathe once more, and the corpses of these titans would serve as a stark reminder of just how close mankind was to an apocalypse by their own hand. Strategy. Each part of the security system is immobile, making them very vulnerable to attacks that would otherwise easily miss, such as freeze-frame rockets. Some of the gaps in the main computer room's defense grid are too high up for a normal jump, but the elevated edge of the room can be used to get higher. More adept movers may instead jump immediately after a ground slam to gain enough height. Moving into the demons. Malicious Face. Type: Lesser Demon. Data: demons are creatures born from the mass of hell. They are most easily recognized by their hard, stone-like exterior and slow movement. Demons have higher intelligence than Husks, but are still incapable of rational thought and communication. No demons have been able to pass the mirror test, though studies are limited due to their hostility. Malicious Faces are the most common type of demon, but are incredibly dangerous, especially in swarms, due to their mastery of the use of hell energy as a weapon. Strategy. Due to their burst fire, they can be quite difficult to get close to, so despite the effectiveness of a point-blank shotgun shot, nails are the recommended course of action, with magnets enabling long-range combat. Due to their invulnerability to explosions, they don't need to hold back the energy of their beam attacks, so staying away from walls and other surfaces is recommended when they begin charging an energy beam. Cerberus. Type: Lesser Demon. Data: although they do not resemble the mythological three-headed dog, this name was chosen due to their nature as protectors of hell. However, it's not yet known why some stay dormant despite provocation. Despite the fact that keeping an energy orb stable takes a considerable amount of focus and effort, they seem to always keep one in hand, most likely as a display of their power to scare off intruders. Strategy. Due to remaining entirely stationary until awoken, they move quite slowly, so engagement distance is easy to control. They're quite adept at ranged combat by throwing their orb, but in order to avoid damaging themselves, they will not initiate a throw while their target is close, which can be used to manipulate their behavior, though once a throw has started, it cannot be stopped. Due to the extreme concentration of their energy orbs, thrown ones will explode on physical contact, so staying close to surfaces such as the floor or any walls will avoid making ranged attacks more difficult. Hideous Mass. Type: Greater Demon. Data: hideous masses are a rare occurrence, when an excessive amount of hell mass is poured into a single shell, causing it to overflow and burst at the seams. Due to the broken seams allowing for mobility without having to bend the exterior, the stone has hardened more than the shell of most demons, making it completely impervious to all currently known attacks. Strategy. Although its stone exterior makes for an impenetrable defense, the hideous mass's belly and tail remain exposed and vulnerable. While standing up, a quick burst of close-range damage is the most effective way to hurt them, though this will most likely cause it to change formations, so being quick and decisive is the key. When in its low formation, keeping a safe distance is recommended due to its melee capabilities and high-speed tail harpoon, though the brave or suicidal may attempt to climb on its back to continue dealing close-range damage to the tail. When caught by the harpoon, it's recommendable to either punch the harpoon or damage the tail to remove it. Idol. Type: Lesser Demon. Data. Although they can easily be mistaken to be of divine origin, idols were created using the same process as other demons. Unlike their larger kin, their cells were too small to contain a useful amount of hell mass, creating life, but leaving it unable to move or to act. The idols did not originally look divine, but were painstakingly carved to such shapes by the ferrymen who collected them during travels across the layers of hell. This was done as both an act of compassion and as a tribute to angels, particularly Gabriel, whom ferrymen believed to have similarly granted them mercy. Close proximity to a ferryman's holy cloth during the long and arduous carving process caused its holy power to seep into them, allowing them to continue the chain of compassion by protecting others from physical harm. It is fortunate for them that Gabriel is the only angel of heaven's higher order to watch over hell, since if the council had found out about such beings, they would have been labeled perversions of the divine form in order to be destroyed by the ferrymen who so lovingly had granted them a chance at life. Strategy. Although idols are immune to projectiles, they can be destroyed by a blunt force melee attack, such as a punch or a ground slam. Blessed enemies cannot be damaged by attacks, but will still be pushed by physical forces and can be killed by environmental dangers such as crushers or fans. Neither idols nor blessed enemies can be grappled onto with the whiplash. Leviathan. Type Supreme Demon. Data. Unlike most demons, the Leviathan is not formed from generic hellmass, but instead from the bodies of the Sullen, a name used for those in the ocean Styx who have given up fighting for air and instead lay at the bottom of the ocean, drowning eternally. The Sullen, in their motionlessness, were eventually fused together by the same force that created the other demons, becoming the biblical Leviathan, an abomination prophesied to be at the end of the world. The heart, which houses the souls of the Sullen in anguish as their flesh, veins, and nerves writhe and mutate, attempted to escape its body, but Gabriel struck it down with his divine spears, pinning it back onto its head, unable to move. Although the world ended, Leviathan remains trapped in the ocean Styx, growing ever longer as more wrath sinners give up and sink to the bottom. Strategy. The Leviathan's heart is exposed on top of its head, making it a clear weak point to aim for. Although it's usually not visible, it can be seen after the Leviathan attacks, opening an opportunity for direct damage or for landing a magnet. Although ill-advised, it is possible to ride the Leviathan for a short period of time. A well-timed jump will allow one to dodge the Leviathan's bite attack, as well as land on its head near its exposed heart. The tail will either swing high or low, and the height of its swing can be determined by the direction in which the swing rotates. Mannequin. Type Lesser Demon. Data. During the departure of the angels after the disappearance of God, many sinners attempted to escape the violence layer, braving the labyrinth that lay at its edges, thinking they could find a way out in the absence of heaven's wardens. The fools who attempted would realize far too late that angels were not all that kept them from freedom, as the Garden of Forking Paths is no ordinary labyrinth, but one of malicious intent, overseen with cunning cruelty. The halls, each similar enough to give no sense of direction, but just differently enough to grant no familiarity, would eventually exhaust each escapee, and as they fell into a deep sleep, their metamorphosis began. Each sinner was torn apart joint by joint, their broken and shattered limbs shoved into hollow statues, startling them to life as the flesh and blood of mannequins. The gift of death is a rare privilege in hell, so the sinners who attempted to control their fate now lay dormant in eternal agony, unable to control even their own bodies, which now continue to carry on the same punishment to other unfortunate fools. Strategy. Though they are nimble, if a mannequin is knocked into the air, or hit while clinging onto a surface, they lose their balance when landing, granting a small window for an easier hit. Those fast enough may even punch them in the air while they're vulnerable, killing them in a single blow. Mannequin projectiles can be difficult to avoid due to their homing capabilities, but this makes them even easier to parry with the feedbacker arm. Mannequins are easier to hit with the larger radius of explosions, but are more resistant against them than other weaponry. Minotaur. Type: Supreme Demon. Data: unknown, no data. ... The Minotaur, one of the oldest known surviving demons, was sculpted by as a gift for then Judge of Hell Minos in an attempt to form some kind of rapport. Though its creator considered it beautiful, a personalized monument of death and despair, Minos was terrified of the grotesque caricature of his past mistakes and cast it into the Garden of Forking Paths, hoping it would never be seen again. Now the Minotaur is old and its body failing, falling apart, running blind through the labyrinth in a desperate attempt to break out, its only desire to see the sky for one last time. Strategy. Although difficult to heal from due to its distance, it is best to be patient. New trams will often arrive carrying weaker foes for easier healing. Much of its body is protected, but its guts are exposed, making for an easy, consistent target. Moving into the Angels. Gabriel, Judge of Hell. Type: Supreme Angel. Data: one of the most respected and feared archangels, Gabriel earned his reputation through power and efficiency. Regardless of the task given, Gabriel would always perform it quickly and decisively, earning him the title of Judge of Hell after dethroning Minos and ending the Lust Renaissance. Despite answering to the council, he is far more popular and beloved among angels due to his radiant personality and active nature, especially compared to the council that strictly follows and upholds the dogma of the faith. Strategy. Gabriel's movements are fast and his attacks are deadly, but by observing which weapon he manifests, his attacks can be accurately predicted before he even starts them. Gabriel's pride stops him from attacking while taunting his opponent, opening a short window for healing. Virtue. Type: Lesser Angel. Data: the basis of a Lesser Angel's forming are quite similar to that of a Husks, wherein the physical manifestation of the soul is dependent on its value. Though unlike for Husks, virtuousness also acts as a factor for angels. Lesser angels come from human souls, which are formed into abstract or animalistic shapes, making them distinct from the humanoid bodies of greater and supreme angels, who were created as such and are considered purer and placed higher on heaven's societal hierarchy. Due to their past lives as humans, virtues are often sent to complete tasks that greater angels deem below them or otherwise uninteresting, such as acting as wardens in hell. Their virtues use heavenly fire to punish sinners who aren't acting out their punishment in order to not waste Gabriel's time with minor offenses and fluctuations. Virtues are normally known to have a multitude of eyes, though for unknown reasons these eyes are hidden or removed for ones that become wardens in hell. Some have speculated this may be related to why almost all Husks lack eyes, with the only verified exceptions being the previous Judge of Hell, King Minos. Little is known about the specifics of angels, as heaven is exclusionary and segregated due to wanting little to no direct contact with God's human experiment. Strategy. Verticality and cover give little safety against the virtue's light beams, so consistent horizontal movement is encouraged, though retracing one's steps can be dangerous as the beams linger. If ignored for too long, virtues will enrage, making their light beams predict their target's movement. Although it's easy to avoid their attacks with enough space, leaving them unattended can quickly turn the tables in their favor. Gabriel, apostate of hate. Type, Supreme Angel. Having twice clashed with the machine and lost, Gabriel realizes he had been mistaken. The strong fire that burned inside him was not hatred at all, but passion. Gabriel had never before known the joy of a struggle, of coming face to face with an opponent of equal or greater measure. Though he had lost twice, each loss only further grew his desire to overcome. Up until now, he had only done what was expected of him, but now for the first time he had found something that he himself wanted. Not even the fast encroaching end of hell mattered to him anymore. Still, having come to realize the horrors he had committed in God's name, he felt a great guilt. Though he could not undo what he had done, Gabriel knew he had to make things right and headed to hell for one last time. Strategy. While Gabriel's speed has increased, his accuracy has not. Dodging diagonally or to the side will prove more fruitful than trying to run backwards out of the range of his swords. Though his sword throw may seem impossible to dodge, it will prove an excellent weapon if parried instead. Overcome with emotions, Gabriel will sometimes stop to taunt his opponent, creating a window for healing. Something wicked. Type, question mark, question mark, question mark. Data. Very little is known about this creature. Some speculate it to be a husk, but due to its elusive and extremely hostile nature, no one has been able to confirm the hypothesis. All that can be determined for sure is that it consists entirely of a withered cardiovascular system and a dead heart, which has led to the common assumption that its physical body's manifestation failed. Only one has ever been observed, and it has never been seen leaving the section of the mouth of hell in which it currently resides. Strategy. Any attack will temporarily cause it to relocate, but there are no known ways to kill it. Its way of attacking is unknown outside of the fact that it happens on physical contact, but no amount of protection has saved any of its victims. Moving into question marks. Flesh prison. Type, question mark. Data. Flesh prison is an uncategorized organism created by the angels to imprison Minos' soul after he was slain by Gabriel. Although it is similar to Husks, it does not possess a soul or any amount of thought. All of its actions are purely predetermined reactions to stimulus, making it more of an organic machine than a living being. In order to make it as impenetrable as possible, it was given both divine power and hell energy, which makes its attacks erratic and chaotic. Strategy. Flesh prison will use its spawn to heal its wounds. The more spawn are left, the more likely it is for flesh prison to attempt to heal its wounds, so it's advisable to avoid damaging it until the spawn are dead. The long window of a delayed split shot timing makes for a great way to clear out multiple spawn at once. Throwing multiple coins high into the air and waiting for them to reach the delayed split shot state before shooting them is a strong opening move after Flesh Prison creates its spawn. Flesh Panopticon. Type, question marks. Data, Flesh Panopticon is a superior version of the Flesh Prison, built to not only house the soul of King Sisyphus, but also with the capability to keep a watchful eye over any of his followers that may be imprisoned alongside him. This feature was however never utilized, as Sisyphus' prime soul had already started forming before being imprisoned, leading angels to fear that he may be able to break out of his prison if awakened. Strategy. Though Flesh Panopticon creates fewer spawn than its predecessor, they are more resilient and their gaze is able to stop all wounds from healing. This may seem just a curse, but it nullifies the Whiplash's primary flaw, allowing it to be used freely to approach and destroy the spawn at close range. Flesh Panopticon's explosives make it dangerous to stay on the ground. They will phase through the Panopticon to avoid it harming itself, making standing on top of it safer as long as the black hole isn't nearby. Moving into Prime Souls. Minos Prime. Prime Soul. Data. A prime soul is an incredibly rare occurrence in which a soul amasses so much power that it no longer requires a husk as a vessel to manifest physically. As manifestations of pure will, prime souls are incredibly powerful, to the point that even the prideful angels see them as a threat and will use any means necessary to stop them from forming. King Minos felt that eternal suffering was unfair and unreasonable punishment for those whose only sin was loving another. After the disappearance of God, as angels were lost and heaven was in chaos, Minos began his efforts to reform the lust layer. The lust renaissance was prosperous as King Minos guided its inhabitants to come together and build a new civilization. The combined efforts of the countless who had been damned to the second layer bore great results, and the grand city of lust grew and grew. However, after the council took control of heaven and brought stability to it through their iron fist rule, they saw that Minos had gone against God's will by freeing sinners from the punishment that God had designed for them. Gabriel, the brightest of the angels, was sent to kill Minos. The king, rather than fight back, tried to reason with him, but Gabriel mercilessly struck him down without listening. As Minos' will was strong enough to attempt to stand up to heaven's rule, the angels chose to imprison his soul in an attempt to stop it from forming into a prime soul, and appointed Gabriel as the new judge of hell. From the prison inside his own body, Minos helplessly watched as his soulless corpse, now controlled by parasites, tore apart everything he had worked so hard to build, cursing his own weakness for failing to protect his people, vowing to take revenge. Strategy. It's rare for Minos Prime to give a window of opportunity to heal, so it's vital to learn what attacks leave him momentarily vulnerable and how to dodge them in a way that gives an advantageous position during those moments. His snake projectiles can be carried using the feedbacker for a full heal, even if the projectile doesn't hit Minos Prime. Parried, not carried. Sisyphus Prime. Type, Prime Soul. Data. Though Minos was intelligent and persuasive, he was also a gentle and noble man. Such values mattered little to Sisyphus, who would gladly lie, cheat, or kill if that's what is needed to protect his comrades. In a hubristic show of power, heaven decided that the only correct punishment for his sins would be breaking his will by subjecting him to an unending and impossible task, unaware of just how tenacious the spite of man can be. For thousands of years, Sisyphus bided his time, suffering his punishment day after day without any sign of regret or remorse, waiting for the perfect chance to strike and subvert heaven's tyrannical rule. With the disappearance of God and chaos in heaven, Sisyphus' time had finally come, and once the angels returned, they were met with a force and fury that had boiled in the hearts of men for millennia, a war cry so fierce it shook the very foundations of hell. It was all for naught, however, as Sisyphus' charisma and drive had made his warriors dependent on his radiance and guidance. Although he did not know why yet, Gabriel recognized this flaw, having experienced it firsthand, and ordered a focused assault to take down the king. He unsheathed his swords for the first time since time immemorial and beheaded Sisyphus, displaying his head for all to see. The morale of Sisyphus' army was broken, and the rest of the war was little more than a formality without their shining beacon. The failure of the insurrection was no surprise, however, and few knew that better than Sisyphus himself. He knew that he was fighting a losing battle, that even if they miraculously survived this encounter, they had no chance of winning a full-scale war against all of heaven. Yet he thrust his full heart and soul into battle with a wide smile on his face. To him, fighting an impossible battle with full knowledge of its futility and taking joy in just the act of resistance itself is the ultimate rebellion against the oppressor. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Strategy. Sisyphus' relentless attacks leave little room to recover stamina, but many of them are parryable, allowing for an instant refill. The radiant power of the sun makes Sisyphus's explosive attacks very difficult to avoid, but since a dash gives temporary invincibility, good timing allows one to avoid the damage of an explosion without actually needing to escape its radius. And that's the end of the enemy's logs. I'll now move to the weapon info. I'm not gonna read the tooltips for these, just the info logs. Revolver. Data. A weapon created during the final war for medium to long distance combat. Uses electric pulses to fire microscopic pieces of metal at incredibly high speeds. Weapons that use this technology have been dubbed electric guns, and it quickly became the new standard, replacing bullet guns. Due to still requiring a microscopic projectile, its ammo is not actually infinite, but it would take weeks of non-stop firing to run out, and refilling is as easy as just scraping some metal flakes from scrap metal or even the gun's surface. In fact, a rough, uneven surface from scraping flakes is considered a point of pride for wielders of electric guns, as it shows the weapon has been reliable and used for a long time. Many users even shave off flakes just for this reason, rather than for actual ammunition, making unflaked electric weapons an outlier. Although an electric gun requires some time to recharge its battery between shots, the revolver-style design bypasses that issue by including a multi-battery cylinder that rotates after each shot, allowing each battery time to recharge without slowing down the fire rate. A common modification is to allow for the charges of all batteries to be released simultaneously for greater power, though this requires a longer recharge time. Strategy. The revolver's precision and the instant travel time of its shots make it an excellent and reliable way to deal damage at range, as it's unlikely anything could have reaction times fast enough to dodge it. Headshots deal 2x damage, limb shots 1.5x. Advanced strategy. When hit with precise timing during its flash, the Marksman Variations coin can split a shot in two, causing it to hit 2 targets instead of just 1. Although the timing is tight, there is a second, much longer window. If the coin remains airborne for an extended period of time, recognizable by its continuous whistling sound. The Marksman Variations coin can be punched after it has flashed, launching it to the nearest target without breaking the coin, increasing its damage for subsequent punches or shots. The Piercer's charge shot can also ricochet off of the Marksman Variations coins. Shotgun. Data. An experimental close-range weapon that uses hyper-concentrated heat as its projectiles. After each shot, the shotgun must be opened to allow its heat-generating cores to vent excess heat, stopping them from melting or exploding. This process is largely automated, requiring little more from the user than a flick of the wrist. In cases of core failure, the pump can be used as a manual heat-building mechanism. This process has been simplified via a small button near the grip that pumps the shotgun without requiring physical force from the user, though its ease of use has also greatly increased the reported amount of misfires from users pumping too much heat into a single shot. Heat weapons never caught on as much as electric weapons due to their volatile nature and strict cooling requirements, but unlike electric weapons, they don't require a separate projectile, making their ammunition truly infinite rather than just practically infinite. Strategy. The shotgun is only effective at extremely close ranges, making it a risky but very devastating damage dealer. This also makes it ideal for healing. Can parry melee attacks via a point-blank shot to the chest, riskier than using the feedbacker arm, but with higher damage as a reward. Advanced strategy. Quickly swapping weapons skips the wait time after a shot, allowing for continuous bursts of massive damage at the risk of having to stay close for an extended period of time. The core eject variations core can be shot out of the air via a hit-scan weapon such as the revolver to increase the radius and damage of its explosion. An already explosive hit scan will increase its radius even further. The slowness of the condensed heat projectiles may seem like a detriment at first, but this means that a well-timed punch with the feedback or arm can hit them, parrying one's own shot for far greater accuracy, speed, and damage. Nail gun. Data. A combination of parts from an industrial nail gun and an old bullet gun, most likely engineered by a machine that was built for construction work, as all machines, even those not built for war, had to learn to fend for themselves after the extinction of mankind. Bullet guns were largely abandoned after the invention of infinite ammunition systems such as electric weapons and heat weapons, largely due to how much cheaper not having to buy ammunition for large-scale armies becomes over time. Although the original ammunition system made it useless and largely abandoned, this gun was still excellently designed and built, so with some retrofitting of parts from an industrial nail gun, it has become a rapid-fire projectile weapon with practically infinite metal ammunition. As is to be expected from an improvised weapon, though, its design is far from perfect, as the nail regeneration system was not designed to work at such a high rate. It's liable to overheat if a hard rate limit isn't set on it, though some variations have instead opted for built-in heat sinks. Strategy. Due to the nature of its limited ammunition, the nail gun is best used in short bursts rather than extended periods of time. The attractor variation's magnets will also affect the nails from other nail gun variations, allowing the bypassing of otherwise limiting factors such as the burst from the overheat variation having poor accuracy. Some enemies such as malicious faces are generally weak to nails, and in particular the higher quality nails from the hard limited attractor variation will decimate most weak foes. Advanced strategy. Nails become embedded in enemies, causing some special effects. Electric weapons will receive a damage boost from hitting an enemy that has nails in it, and with enough nails, light enemies become magnetized and pulled by the attractor variation's magnets, allowing for easy temporary disabling of durable light enemies. The speed of the barrel's spin carries over between variations, meaning shooting even once with the attractor variation gives maximum heat for the overheat variation, allowing for instant full overheat burst. Rail cannon. Data. This industrial tool was one of the earliest uses for the technology that eventually became electric guns. Originally meant as a handheld generator, allowing for an easy way to generate electricity for temporary relocations such as encampments during wars or expeditions. As with most industrial tools, once mankind failed, it was repurposed as a weapon by the machine that wielded it, turning it from a lower voltage constant output to extremely high bursts of energy that requires a long recharge time between shots. Although a risky weapon since its recharge time is so long, the rail cannon's power makes it a worthy tool to wield, especially for someone carrying multiple weapons that they can use while the railgun's battery recharges. Strategy. Each variation serves a different purpose, and since they all share the same cooldown, it's important to know which version to use in any given situation. Total recharge time is 16 seconds. Current charge is indicated by lightning bolt on the HUD. Advanced strategy. The electric variation can hit the marksman revolver's coins. Since it has infinite piercing power with good time and positioning, one can shoot through an enemy to hit a coin, will then ricochet the shot back into the same enemy, more than doubling the total damage dealt by a single shot. By using the feedback or arm to punch an enemy that the screwdriver variation screw is attached to, it can be relaunched, dealing an extra burst of damage to the enemy. If the screw hits another enemy, its timer will be fully reset, meaning a screw can be juggled between enemies practically infinitely with good timing and aim, though it will break if the enemy it's attached to dies. The malicious variation's explosion range and damage can be greatly increased by hitting an airborne core from the core eject shotgun. This technique is highly risky, since missing means wasting the entire shot and having to wait another 16 seconds, but its rewards are bountiful. Rocket launcher. Data. Another weapon that used to be an industrial tool, as it's visible from it, and the rail can. Another weapon that used to be an industrial tool, as is visible from it and the rail cannon's more vibrant color schemes compared to guns such as the revolver, shotgun, and a nail gun, which uses a bullet weapon at its base. As with most advanced technologies, it was originally created for use in war, as its explosive generating system was extremely fast at digging trenches, destroying obstacles, or resupplying explosive weapons. However, this tool itself could not be used as a launcher. Early models doubled as weapons, but including the systems for triggering the explosives often caused accidental chemical reactions during their generation process, detonating the explosives before they had been completed. Since then, the process has been split in two between the generating device and a separate rocket launcher where the explosives generator builds the rest of a rocket and the rocket launcher applies the triggering mechanism. As machines rarely have the luxury of cooperation, due to sharing blood with others being seen as a waste, the machine that created this weapon instead modified the generation process to work with just a single user and repurposed parts from a jackhammer for launching the projectile. Instead of using a normal explosion triggering mechanism, the rockets instead use the blood of the target to complete the chemical reaction, making the generation process safe, though the weapon is more difficult to use as it requires direct hits to cause damage. The skill required for effective use makes it daunting, though its power more than makes up for it, and many of its wielders specifically choose to use it as a symbol of its skill at marksmanship. Strategy. Rockets only cause a damage-dealing explosion when hitting a living target directly, but missing on purpose can be used to launch an enemy into the air, since a direct hit on a falling enemy causes a larger, more damaging explosion. Rockets that have been frozen with the freeze frame variation for longer than a second will always cause this higher damage explosion on impact with an enemy. The launcher requires very little preparation to be used, meaning it can be quickly pulled out, fired, and put back away to deal a quick burst of extra damage in the middle of another weapon switching combo. Rockets are pulled by the attractor nail gun's magnets, though not as strongly as nails. The accuracy of the tracking can be increased by freezing rockets with the freeze frame variation. When hit with the whiplash, a rocket will be attached to the spear without stopping the throw. If the spear doesn't collide with anything else, the rocket will be pulled back with it, exploding on collision with the user. The cannonballs from the SRS cannon can be punched to launch them with greater force, shot with the hit scan weapon for an explosion, or dropped on the ground to launch enemies. Advanced strategy. Light enemies will be airborne when pulled by the whiplash, making them very easy targets to hit for the falling enemy explosion bonus. However, this requires a lot of distance from the target if the user wishes to avoid the explosion's increased radius. Some machines such as V1 are light enough to ride a rocket. This can be achieved by freezing a rocket with the freeze frame variation and jumping onto it. Even with the low weight, the rocket will eventually lose power, causing it to drop gradually, but when underwater, V1 is light enough to not cause this drop. Although the cannonballs from the SRS cannon variation can be punched the moment they've been launched, they will have greater durability if punched after they've bounced off an enemy. And there's not lower logs for the arms. So that's about it. Thank you everyone for watching. I guess I'll have to do another one of these when the full game drops. Or I guess the next layer. I'll probably just wait for the full game. I'm not gonna do this again like 2 more times. But yeah, if you made it through the whole thing, thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and check out other videos, all that stuff, comment, whatever, engagement, blah blah blah. And have a good day. Peace out.